500,000 miles sounds ridiculous until you see which pickup trucks have actually survived hundreds of thousands of miles. These five weren't chosen because they look tough. They're here because their engines and drivetrains have earned a reputation for keeping trucks on the road long after most would be gone. And number one has gone twice as far. Number 5. Honda Ridgeline from 2007 to 2013. A pickup does not need a giant V8 or a heavy-duty badge to rack up serious mileage. The Honda Ridgeline is proof of that. At first glance, it almost looks too civilized for a list like this. It rides more like an SUV, uses a V6, and has a very different design from the big work trucks that usually dominate the high-mileage conversation. But that difference is exactly what makes the Ridgeline interesting. The first-generation Ridgeline has built a surprisingly strong high-mileage record. iSeeCars gives the 2006 to 2014 generation 8.9 out of 10 reliability score, and its data shows the Ridgeline has a 38.9% predicted chance of reaching at least 200,000 miles over its usable lifespan. And real owners have pushed these trucks much further. There are first-generation Ridgelines with 300,000 miles and beyond still being used as daily drivers. Owners have reported examples around 320,000, 350,000, and even higher, with some describing the engine and transmission as still running well after years of use. That matters because 500,000 miles is not about having one engine that nobody else can duplicate. It is about starting with a truck that can survive one high-mileage stage after another. Think about what 500,000 miles actually means. At 15,000 miles a year, that is more than 33 years of driving. At 20,000 miles a year, it is still 25 years. That is an enormous amount of road time. A truck has to deal with heat, cold starts, traffic, long highway runs, potholes, worn suspension parts, aging electronics, and countless trips where the owner simply turns the key and expects it to work. The Ridgeline's advantage is that it was never trying to be the toughest-looking truck in the parking lot. It was designed around being useful every day. The V6 provides plenty of power for normal hauling and towing, while the unibody design gives it a smoother driving experience than traditional body-on-frame pickups. That makes the Ridgeline especially interesting for someone who does not need to tow a huge trailer every weekend. A person might use it for commuting Monday through Friday, haul supplies on Saturday, take a road trip on Sunday, and repeat the same routine for years. That kind of everyday use is exactly where long-term durability starts to matter. And there is another reason the older Ridgeline deserves attention. Its age is now working in its favor. A 2007 truck has had almost 2 decades to prove what it can do. There is no need to guess how a brand new design might age over the next 15 or 20 years. High-mileage examples already exist, and owners have had plenty of time to discover what tends to wear out and what keeps going. That does not mean every old Ridgeline is automatically a 500,000-mile truck. The difference between a neglected example and a properly maintained one can be enormous. But when the right Ridgeline is maintained and kept on the road, the mileage can become almost surprising. And that is what earns it the number 5 spot. 500,000 miles is an extreme target, but the Ridgeline has already shown that 200,000 and 300,000 mile territory is not something impossible. With a strong high-mileage track record, a durable V6, and years of real-world examples behind it, this unusual Honda pickup has earned its place among trucks worth watching when the goal is to keep driving long after the odometer stops looking normal. Number 4. Nissan Frontier from 2011 to 2019. Some pickup trucks try to impress with size, power, and technology. The Frontier took a different route: keep the formula simple and keep using it. The second-generation Frontier stayed on the market for an unusually long time, and that matters when looking for trucks that can pile on serious mileage. Instead of constantly replacing the basic mechanical setup with something completely new, Nissan continued with a familiar body-on-frame platform and conventional powertrain. The result is a truck with years of real-world history behind it. The 2011 to 2019 models are the ones that make the most sense here. The earlier 2005 to 2010 trucks had a known radiator transmission cooler problem that could allow coolant to contaminate the automatic transmission fluid. That is exactly why the later trucks are the better choice when the goal is extreme mileage. And once that problem is out of the picture, the Frontier's appeal becomes much easier to understand. The available 4-liter V6 and conventional transmission were already well established. There was no need for a complicated setup to make the truck useful. It was built around a traditional pickup layout, with a body-on-frame chassis, rear-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, and a conventional automatic or manual transmission. That simplicity becomes valuable when the odometer keeps climbing. At 100,000 miles, a truck is still considered fairly young by high-mileage standards. At 200,000, the story gets more interesting. At 300,000, every additional mile starts telling you something about how well that particular truck was maintained. And 500,000 miles is where the difference between an ordinary pickup and a truly long-lasting one becomes enormous. There are owners who have pushed Frontiers deep into high-mileage territory. One owner reported a first-generation Frontier with more than 500,000 miles, while another reported a 2004 cylinder with more than 361,000 miles and very few major issues. These are individual owner reports rather than proof that every Frontier will reach those numbers, but they show why the model has developed such a strong high-mileage following. What makes the Frontier especially interesting is how familiar the truck feels even after all these years. The controls are straightforward. The mechanical layout is conventional. The truck does not depend on a huge amount of technology just to perform basic pickup duties. That can make a difference when a vehicle is expected to stay on the road for decades. A truck that reaches 500,000 miles will almost certainly need repairs along the way. Suspension components wear out, rubber parts age, sensors fail. A starter or alternator may eventually need replacing. None of that automatically means the truck has reached the end of its useful life. The important question is what happens to the core drivetrain while all of those smaller parts are being replaced. And that is where the Frontier earns its place. The 2011 to 2019 trucks give buyers access to a long-running platform with a large history of real-world use. Even Consumer Reports rated the 2019 Frontier as more reliable than other vehicles from its model year. That does not make it the most powerful truck here. It does not have to be. The point of this list is not which pickup can tow the biggest trailer or make the most horsepower. It is which trucks have the right combination of durable mechanicals, proven design, and real-world high-mileage history to make 500,000 miles a realistic target. And the Frontier has a surprisingly strong case. The biggest reason to choose the 2011 to 2019 range is simple. It avoids the worst early-generation transmission cooler problem, while keeping the older, proven mechanical formula that made the Frontier so popular with people who wanted a straightforward midsize truck. So when a Frontier passes 200,000 miles, that does not automatically mean the story is over. For a properly maintained example, 300,000 is where the conversation gets interesting, and 500,000 is where the truck has the chance to separate itself from the ordinary pickups. That is exactly why the Nissan Frontier takes number 4. Number 3. Ford F-250 Super Duty from 2011 to 2016. A 500,000-mile pickup needs more than a strong engine. It needs a chassis, transmission, cooling system, and drivetrain that can handle years of hard use. That is where the Ford F-250 Super Duty becomes interesting. This is not a small pickup built mainly for commuting. The F-250 was designed for people who actually put trucks to work. Towing, hauling, construction, farming, long-distance driving. This platform was made for jobs where a truck can spend hours under load. And the numbers back up its long-term reputation. iSeeCar's current reliability data gives the F-250 a 27.9% predicted chance of reaching at least 200,000 miles, based on more than 300 million vehicle records. But for this list, the more interesting part is the 2011 to 2016 generation. That generation received an 8.9 out of 10 reliability score from iSeeCars for its generation, putting it among the stronger F-250 generations. It was offered with the 6.2-liter gasoline V8 or the 6.7-liter Power-Stroke diesel, giving buyers two very different ways to build a high-mileage truck. The 6.2-liter V8 is especially interesting when the goal is long-term ownership. It is a large displacement gasoline engine with a simple purpose: move a heavy truck without being pushed to its limits every second it is running. That matters when the odometer keeps climbing. There are owner reports of 6.2-liter F-250s reaching 300,000 to 400,000 miles and beyond, with some examples reportedly continuing on their original major engine components. Those are individual vehicles rather than a guarantee for every truck, but they show why the engine has developed a following among people who want a heavy-duty truck without depending on a diesel. Then there is the 6.7-liter Power-Stroke. This engine changed Ford's diesel pickup game when it arrived in 2011. It was Ford's first in-house designed Power-Stroke diesel V8, built specifically for the Super Duty platform. It produces the kind of torque that makes heavy towing feel like normal work rather than something the truck is struggling to handle. But the F-250's high-mileage story is not simply about horsepower. It is about what happens when a truck is built for working. A normal passenger vehicle might spend most of its time carrying one or two people. An F-250 can spend years pulling trailers, carrying heavy loads, and driving long distances. The entire truck is designed around that kind of use. That is why 200,000 miles doesn't automatically sound ancient on a Super Duty. CARFAX's reliability data shows that 61% of F-250 Super Duty examples in its dataset reached 200,000 miles, which is a useful indication of how many of these trucks survive into serious mileage territory. And once a truck has already spent years proving itself at 200,000 miles, the question becomes much more interesting. How much farther can it go? That is where 500,000 miles comes into the picture. Nobody needs to pretend that every F-250 will reach 500,000 miles. The point is that the platform has the right ingredients for extreme mileage: a heavy-duty frame, large engines, proven drivetrains, and a huge number of trucks that have spent their lives doing actual work. The 6.2-liter gas V8 is particularly attractive for someone who wants to keep things straightforward. The 6.7 diesel makes more sense for someone who regularly needs serious towing power. Either way, the condition of the individual truck matters enormously once the mileage gets high. And that brings up one of the biggest advantages of buying an older work truck. There is already a long history behind it. A 2011 F-250 is no longer an unknown experiment. It has had more than a decade on the road. By now, owners have discovered which components wear out, which engines hold up, and what kind of maintenance these trucks need to keep going. That history is valuable. Because when the goal is 500,000 miles, the best truck is not necessarily the newest or most powerful one. It is the one with enough proven mileage behind it that there is a reason to believe the next 100,000 miles are possible. The F-250 earns number 3 because it combines that proven history with something the smaller trucks on this list simply cannot match: heavy-duty construction. It was built to work hard from the beginning. And when a truck starts its life designed around heavy loads, then spends years being properly maintained, reaching 300,000 or even 500,000 miles becomes a much more believable target. That is why the F-250 sits at number 3, with 2 Toyota pickups still ahead, and one of them has already crossed the 1 million mile mark. Number 2, Toyota Tacoma from 2005 to 2015. A lot of pickups become expensive projects once the odometer gets high. The Tacoma has a different reputation. There is a reason old Tacomas with huge mileage still attract buyers even when the truck itself is more than a decade old. The 2005 to 2015 Tacoma is especially interesting because this generation spent years proving itself in real-world use. It was offered with a 2.7-liter four-cylinder or the 4-liter V6 with rear-wheel drive and four-wheel drive configurations. The formula was straightforward: a body-on-frame chassis, proven engines, and a drivetrain designed for actual truck work. And the mileage numbers are hard to ignore. iSeeCar's latest longevity study gives the Tacoma a 25.3% predicted chance of reaching at least 250,000 miles, putting it near the very top of the entire pickup truck market. But the reason the Tacoma belongs in a 500,000-mile video goes beyond one statistic. Look at what happens when these trucks get old. A 2005 Tacoma is now more than 20 years old, yet high-mileage examples are still being bought, sold, driven, repaired, and put back to work. That tells you something important. Owners don't necessarily look at a high-mileage Tacoma and immediately see the end of it. They see a truck that may still have plenty of useful miles left. The 4-liter V6 is a big part of that story. It was not designed around extracting every possible bit of power from a small engine. Instead, it gave the Tacoma enough torque and power for towing, hauling, and off-road driving while maintaining a reputation for durability. And the 4-cylinder deserves attention too. It is less powerful, but for someone who mainly needs transportation, light hauling, and basic truck duties, fewer demands on the drivetrain can make a lot of sense over a very long ownership period. Then there is the Tacoma's size. That sounds like a disadvantage when compared with something like an F-250, but for everyday ownership, it can actually be useful. The truck is smaller, easier to maneuver, easier to park, and generally doesn't need the same level of heavy-duty equipment required by a 3/4-ton truck. So a Tacoma can spend years doing something that sounds boring, but matters enormously for longevity. Hundreds of thousands of miles are usually not created by one spectacular road trip. They are created by doing ordinary driving over and over again while keeping the vehicle maintained. And Tacomas have had a lot of time to prove themselves doing exactly that. There is another reason the 2005 to 2015 generation is such an interesting choice for this list. The truck is old enough that its long-term weaknesses are already well known. That is useful when buying a used vehicle. Instead of wondering how a brand new design will age after 15 years, buyers can look at thousands of older examples and see what tends to happen as the mileage climbs. One issue that absolutely deserves attention is frame corrosion, especially on trucks exposed to road salt. A mechanically excellent Tacoma can still become a bad purchase if the frame is severely rusted. That makes a careful inspection extremely important on an older example. But that actually highlights the bigger point. When the frame is solid, the drivetrain is healthy, and maintenance has been consistent, a high-mileage Tacoma can still have serious mileage left in it. And the 500,000-mile target makes this even more interesting. The Tacoma doesn't have to be treated like a guaranteed half-million-mile machine. It has already shown enough longevity to make 500,000 miles a realistic extreme target for an exceptionally well-maintained example. The difference between 250,000 and 500,000 miles is enormous. Every mile after that is another test of the engine, transmission, suspension, cooling system, electrical components, and the structure holding everything together. That is why the Tacoma's position at number 2 is not based simply on reputation. It is based on a truck that has spent years accumulating real mileage and continues to have one of the strongest longevity records among pickups. And there is one more reason it cannot take number 1. The truck sitting above it has something almost impossible to compete with: a documented Toyota pickup that actually reached 1 million miles. That is the Toyota Tundra. And once that truck enters the conversation, the Tacoma has to settle for number 2. Number 1. Toyota Tundra from 2007 to 2021. The Toyota Tundra takes number 1 because 500,000 miles isn't just a possibility for this truck. The million-mile mark has already been reached. The most famous example is the 2007 Tundra, which passed 1 million miles while still using its original engine and transmission. Toyota eventually acquired the truck and dismantled the engine and drivetrain to study how they had held up. The Tundra also ranks among the strongest long-term pickups in large-scale longevity data, with IC cars estimating a 30.6% chance of reaching 250,000 miles, higher than any other full-size pickup in its 2025 study. The 2007 to 2021 generation is especially interesting because it combines the 5.7-liter iForce V8, a heavy-duty frame, and a conventional truck drivetrain with years of real-world mileage behind it. That million-mile Tundra was not proof that every truck will reach 7 digits. It was proof that the platform is capable of an extraordinary amount of use when properly maintained. So for a video about 500,000-mile pickups, the Tundra doesn't need a hypothetical example. It already has the ultimate mileage record sitting in its history.